Help give kids an extra life by donating today to help sick and injured children. Link in the description and pinned comment below. Once the summer comes, you gotta hydrate or dihydrate. Around 10 years ago, I made a list about the coolest dragons in video games. And it's not a list I'm particularly proud of. Hey, you can't get close to 14 years in this hobby without doing at least a few videos you'd rather forget. So I've decided to revisit this topic and talk about dragons in a way that actually does these magnificent creatures justice. Look, we all know dragons are totally amazing. They're among the coolest of mythical creatures, and they've captured our imaginations for a long, long time. Once again, I'm doing a general inclusion of dragon-adjacent creatures, including wyverns and stuff like that. And since I've played more games since that old relic, I've got more experience to draw from. So let's do it right this time. This is my remake of my top 10 dragons in video games. It's game time! When I think of dragons in video games, one series that comes to mind that escapes most people's notice is Breath of Fire. This was the series that got me into RPGs at large, and it still holds a place in my heart. The main hook of the series is that the main protagonist, with the appropriate default name of Ryu, is a descendant of a powerful clan of beings that can transform into dragons. The means for achieving each new dragon form changes from game to game, but at least in the first 4 games, the mightiest, or almost mightiest form has a name. It's been obscured by time and bad localization, but its true name is Kaiser. Obtaining the Kaiser form is a rite of passage in this franchise, at least once you're able to control it. In Breath of Fire 1 and 3, it comes from proving yourself in a trial by fire. In the first game, it's the 3rd dragon trial where you obtain the power, known in the West as Rudra. In 3, you obtain the Infinity Gene from Jono once you defeat him. But you can't control Kaiser's power unless you nerf it with the Failure Gene, or obtain 2 other genes to harness its full power. In 2, Ryu obtains this form in a moment of desperation when fighting a fellow Dragon Clan member who baited it out by pretending to betray you. In 4, the form emerges in another desperate situation after losing a fight, but you can't control it until you obtain all the other dragons in the game. But no matter when and how you obtain this power, once you have it, you have incredible strength at your fingertips. Enough to take on the greatest threats and come out alive. Hell, at its full power, the Kaiser transformation in Breath of Fire 2 hits the damage cap. Shapeshifting is just so cool! Quite possibly the biggest boner I pulled with my old list was regarding Magma Dragoon from Mega Man X4. I lazily just pointed you all to my favorite Mavericks list and called it a day, not even giving a thought to what makes him a great dragon to begin with. And I've been thinking, why did I choose Dragoon for that list? Especially when Dragon Sky from Mega Man Star Force was right there! Dragon Sky is one of the 3 satellite admins who monitor the satellites that keep the Wave World in check in Star Force 1, alongside Leo Kingdom and Pegasus Magic. In fact, they're partially responsible for the Brother Band with the help of Gio's father. They first appear to Gio after he forms his first Brother Band, telling him of the grave threat that approaches, and testing him to see if he's worthy of the power of Star Force to fight it. The test culminates in a battle against a shadow version of the admin whose version you're playing. Sadly, the Dragon version of the game was GameStop exclusive. Man, store exclusives suck. So once you defeat Dragon Sky, in Dragon version, Omegasis, the EM-based venom to Gio's Eddie Brock for lack of a better analogy, remembers that the satellite admins were the 3 sages of planet AM, but they managed to escape before the planet got fragged by the forces of a certain overly paranoid FM King and his terrifying planet-busting weapon. But hey, they're not bitter. Once Cepheus sees the error of his ways, he offers to help the sages rebuild planet AM. If you want to see Dragon Sky's true power, though, fight him in the post-game dungeon. Where Leo has power over fire and Pegasus commands ice, Dragon Sky harnesses the power of nature, unleashing wood lances, flower petals, and even leaf tornadoes, which makes a lot of sense given Dragon Sky's design, which seems to be based on Chinese dragons instead of the Western image of dragons. And Chinese dragons are associated with the weather. In fact, his most powerful attack, Dragon Cyclone, harnesses both the wind and leaves for a devastating multi-hit combo, and it also serves as the Star Force Big Bang for Geo's dragon form. A lot of power fitting a Grand Sage. Can we get a Star Force Legacy Collection already? It's honestly crazy how Fire Emblem has grown from a niche franchise that was basically on life support to one of Nintendo's pillars. And as far as Fire Emblem goes, regardless of quality, it usually does right by its dragons. Usually being the operative term. When dragons enter the story of a Fire Emblem game, it's usually as a major threat, or as a powerful ally, or sometimes even the main protagonist. It's a good thing then that they started with one heck of a template. Tiki, who made her debut in the original Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, is a Manakete, a descendant of the divine dragon Naga who takes on a human form to contain her power, which can be utilized through a Dragon Stone. In fact, Tiki's potential was so great that she was put into a 500-year sleep to prevent her from degenerating. She was eventually awakened by the fire dragon Bantu, but then Garneth took control of her until Bantu freed her with Marth's help. At this point, Tiki and Marth formed a lasting friendship, and Marth gained an incredibly powerful and adorable ally. Seriously, her stats in the Arcanea saga are insane. 2,000 years later, she returns in Fire Emblem Awakening, my personal introduction to the series. She's grown up now, and is revered as the voice of the Divine Dragon. But when Walhart decides to return Vaughn to its former glory through conquest, Tiki gets captured, Chrom comes to save the day with the help of Scahri, and her rescue marks a turning point for the Resistance. Except she can't regain her full power until you complete a Prologue, which basically amounts to...
No one gets inside our circle! No one gets inside! No one gets inside!
In her more grown-up form, she's more distant and reserved, but no less willing to fight the good fight, and still bearing stats worth taking for a spin, even if you've been with Noe for a while. Heck, Tiki is so iconic she's been in several other games related to the franchise and beyond. In Tokyo Mirage Sessions, she's the game's equivalent to Hatsune Miku, she appears in Warriors and Project Cross Zone 2, and don't get me started on her numerous alts and heroes. She's even shown up in a certain other Nintendo mobile game which may or may not come up later. It's been clear that Tiki has been a fan favorite and set a good example for dragon characters in the series. Much more so than Korin or Pepsi-chan. When it comes to the Zelda franchise, its dragons run the spectrum in terms of threat level. Seriously, they've ranged from first boss in the first game to final boss status in Tears of the Kingdom, and some of them aren't even a direct threat or may even be your allies. But as for which one I'm going with, this is one of the entries from my old list that I'm sticking with. Volvagia, the subterranean lava dragon, is most well known as the boss of the Fire Temple from Ocarina of Time, but his first appearance was in Zelda 2 under the name of Barba, where his fire breath combined with the bottomless pits in the arena would result in numerous occasions of
That is bullshit blazing! Still my heart is blazing!
As for its appearance in Ocarina of Time, Volvagia is more fleshed out and actually has a backstory. According to Goron legend, Volvagia was a menace to the Gorons of ages past, which may have something to do with the fact that the dragon had a steady diet of Gorons. Eventually, it was defeated by the hero of the Gorons who wielded a legendary hammer, until Ganondorf revived it so that it could continue its feeding frenzy and eat the Gorons to extinction, so as to make an example of them to anyone who would dare oppose him. So Darunia, a descendant of the original Goron hero, naturally takes it upon himself to face the beast without the hammer, mind you. Man, that takes guts. And of course, it falls upon you to take it out in high fantasy whack-a-mole. You gotta use that Megaton hammer to slam its face in when it pops out to smack you with its face, and dodge both its deadly fire breath and the rocks it drops from the ceiling when it slams into it. It's an exciting fight and well-fitting for a lava dragon. They went even further in the manga where young Link bought a young Volvagia from the town market, and eventually freed and befriended it. Unfortunately, during the time skip, Ganondorf corrupted the dragon, forcing Link to kill it. Perhaps if they made that story canon, it would have made things even darker than they already were. Oh, and another incarnation of Volvagia shows up in Echoes of Wisdom as the boss in Elden Temple. And I dare say, the options that Echoes of Wisdom gives you makes this fight even better. Do you go yank its pearl away and go ham with Sword Fighter Form's moves? Do you summon a bunch of ranged echoes and let them do the heavy lifting? Do you do something else entirely? It's just really cool! Unfortunately, this is one of the few bosses in the game you can't kill with just a sea urchin. Okay, I'm just gonna go out and say it. One of the biggest sins about my original list on this subject was even making it in the first place without ever even having played a Spyro game. I mean, making a list about dragons without including the most iconic dragon protagonist of all time?
This is blasphemy. This is madness!
Yeah, full disclosure, I didn't grow up with the PlayStation. My first Sony console was the PS2, and even that was originally meant so that I could exercise the DDR. Okay, that's too much information. But long story short, I missed out on Spyro when I was growing up, seeing that he started out as one of the PS1's icons. But thanks to the Reignited trilogy, I was finally able to see what all the fuss was about. And honestly, how often did you have a dragon being a hero in a game in that era? In the old fantasy stories, dragons tended to be the bad guys. You know, kidnapping princesses, hoarding treasure, burninating the countryside, the classic modus operandi. In those rare occasions where they were good, they were usually supporting characters. But here, you're the dragon. A small dragon, but a dragon nonetheless. And you get to do all the things, well, most of the things that dragons do. Breathe fire, fly, hoard treasure, even heal by eating livestock. Heck, the bigger dragons that normally serve as boss material in most other games are actually the ones in need of rescue in the first game, thanks to one nasty Nork. Spyro himself has evolved as a character over the years. Originally as a young dragon, he was cocky, headstrong, and a bit of a brat. Throughout the rest of the original trilogy, he mellowed out quite a bit with the help of his new friends, but he remained headstrong and kind of irresponsible with little regard for his own safety, traits that have tended to get him into trouble. Of course, he's proven himself capable of getting out of that trouble, sometimes on his own and sometimes with the help of his comrades. Future games have tried to flesh out his personality further, with some rather mixed results. Arguably the best attempt at fleshing out Spyro as a character would be the Legend of Spyro trilogy, a reboot of the franchise that struck a darker and more mature tone. Compared to the original trilogy, Spyro becomes more mature and level-headed, and though still showing signs of recklessness at times, he shows willingness to correct his past mistakes. Unfortunately, of late, this once proud dragon has been reduced to fanservice in Crash Bandicoot games, like Nitro Fueled and Team Rumble. And considering that he's in the hands of Microsoft, the chances of a true return to form for our favorite purple dragon are looking bleaker by the day. We can only hope for a miracle. Okay, mini rant here, but what was the point of having dragon-type trainers in the first two Pokemon generations? I mean, Gen 1 had a whole one dragon-type line, meaning that the dragon-type Elite Four member had to improvise. Even in Gen 2, they still added a single, solitary new dragon type as a new evolution in an already existing line, and Lance still had to improvise with dragons that weren't actually dragon types. At least until Gen 6 in the case of Charizard, and that was a Mega Evo. At least in Gen 3, we started getting enough new dragon types that the resident dragon trainer could build a whole team around the type. But as you've probably figured out, none of those dragons are on this list. Yup, as predictable as it sounds, I'm bringing back my old friend Rayquaza. The third member of the Weather Trio and the poster boy for Emerald, Rayquaza does double duty in its lore. It spends most of its time patrolling the ozone layer, working to protect the planet from things like asteroids and the occasional unruly DN alien. But on certain desperate situations, like, say, a drought causing Earth Behemoth and a downpour causing Leviathan being revived by the region's rival villain teams, and fighting like spoiled children causing chaos in their wake, the Big Daddy Ziz will come down and basically be the exasperated parent breaking up the fight as if to say, "Stop fighting right now! No dessert for the both of you! Don't make me use my airlock ability!" I guess it makes sense given that Rayquaza's design resembles a Chinese dragon. Now, if you recall, I mentioned earlier that Chinese dragons are associated with weather, which fits perfectly both with its ability and its role in breaking up the fight between Groudon and Kyogre. Not to mention saving the Earth from a devastating asteroid in two separate continuities, the first being in Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team, and the second being in the Delta episode of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. In the latter case, it came with a Mega Evolution so busted, it out-Ubered Ubers and created its own tier with ludicrous attack stats and a new ability that essentially nullifies the weaknesses of one of its types. And unlike other Megas, it doesn't need to be equipped with a Megastone because it ate the damn thing! All you need is a powerful flying-type move called Dragon Ascent. Why it isn't a Dragon-type move is beyond me. And it's not like Rayquaza even needed a Mega in the first place, because even its standard form has stats befitting a legendary. with insane levels of both attack stats and decent speed to ensure that anyone who takes an attack from this crazy-ass space noodle is gonna be feeling it at the Pokemon Center in the morning. This legendary takes no crap from anyone, and we love it for that. Alright, we've gotten to this point so far, so let's talk about a glaring absence from my old list. Ridley. Yeah, at the time, I was debating whether or not Ridley even counted as a dragon, seeing as that I saw him as more alien than anything else. But 7th Dragon proved that dragons can come from space, so in that context, I really have no excuse now, do I? After all, just look at the dude. Distinctive screech, sneering beak, menacing claws, and pterodactyl-like wings. Yeah, that fits the bill really well. Not to mention that spear-like tail that would make even scorpions say, dude, not bad. Interestingly, Ridley is a dragon in 2 different ways. I've already gone over the first way in terms of appearances, and it also fits in terms of how he fights. Fire breath, vicious claw swipes, flying through the air and bombarding you. These are tough-ass fights, let me tell ya. Not only is Ridley monstrously strong in battle, but he's also highly intelligent and a shrewd tactician to boot. But there exists a trope in fiction called the Dragon. This refers to an antagonist who serves as the right hand of the main villain.
Your right hand comes off?
Sometimes said character is the most active antagonist in the story, while the true villain gives orders in the shadows. How does that describe Ridley? How doesn't that describe Ridley? Despite being Samus's arch-nemesis, the guy f***ing killed Samus's parents after all, not to mention one of the space pirates' top brass, he's never the main villain in any of the games. In most of Ridley's appearances, nearly all of them in fact, Ridley is the penultimate threat, one of the last enemies Samus has to overcome before entering the endgame. In the original game, he's the one protecting the way to Mother Brain. In Prime 1, he's the one guarding the way to the Metroid Prime. In Prime 3, he's a pawn of Dark Samus protecting the last Leviathan. In Super Metroid, he steals the baby Metroid, yes, but he's doing so on the orders of the reborn Mother Brain. In Other M, he's cloned and serves to bungle Samus's PTSD angle prior to the fights with the Metroid Queen, MB, and the epilogue against Phantoon. And in Fusion, an X-Parasite puppets the clone's frozen corpse prior to the final showdown with the SAX. And he won't stay dead. Samus has had to kick this guy's ass again and again, venting her unbridled anger every time she sees his face. It's one of the biggest and longest-lasting rivalries in video games, to the point where it's easier to count the times that Ridley hasn't been in a Metroid game. In fact, he's so iconic that Mercury Steam decided to bring him in for a surprise final boss in Samus Returns, which is the only time he's been a final boss. Mecha Ridley doesn't count. It would come as no surprise that a list about dragons should return to the world of Monster Hunter. On my original list, I put Gore Magala at number 1, along with its grown-up variant, Shagaru Magala. But that came down mostly to recency and personal bias. Since then, we've seen 2 whole generations with all new types of monsters, including Nergigante, Malzeno, Xeno'jiiva, and in Wilds they've even gone so far as to give us man-made abominations like... But the biggest threats in Monster Hunter are the Elder Dragons, akin to natural disasters. While a game's Elder Dragon lineup is likely to include the franchise's version of Hot Dog Taco Hamburger, any such enemy that shows up is meant to be a threat. Especially the Black Dragons, the strongest of all. And even among those, one stands the pinnacle as mankind's true nemesis. A monster so terrifying that even seasoned hunters shudder at its name. Fatalis. As a dragon that witnessed hunters slaughtering other monsters and making weapons and armor from their remains, Fatalis holds a deep-seated grudge against humanity. So much so that it attacked the kingdom of Shrade, a small kingdom but a center of commerce. What better place to exact your revenge against the people who slaughter your kind to keep the ecosystem in balance, right? It's said that he melted the bodies of hunters to make his own armor as punishment for their sins. The battle that ensued was a disaster, and few survivors remained of that battle. Its tale has been passed down through the songs of children to this day. Whoa, all this lore and I haven't even talked about fighting this apocalypse with wings. It's been around since the very beginning as the final online boss of the first Monster Hunter, only accessible to those who completed every other quest. Those who dared to face the beast had to beware its tremendous physical strength and devastating fire attacks, and it was so powerful that it required 4 quests to kill it. It's made several more appearances since, including its most famous and most recent one, the final update of World's Iceborne expansion. Facing Fatalis in World is not just a battle against a dragon, it's a battle against history itself in the ruins of Castle Schrade. To have any chance of winning, you have to use the armaments in the castle to your full advantage, and use whatever cover you can find when it unleashes its full firepower. And that's not even counting its variants. There's the Crimson Fatalis, a Fatalis that's bathed in a volcano and increased its fire breath even more, and then there's the White Fatalis, who is said to be that original Fatalis who survived that fateful battle, and can even call down the thunder on you. Now that is true terror. It's so powerful, it even broke into another certain game that may or may not be brought up soon. Yeah, foreshadowing and all that. The more Final Fantasy changes, the more things stay the same. Once again, Bahamut, an icon of what was once the premier RPG franchise, barely misses out on the top spot. I already know I'm about to get roasted, but it could be worse. If I put Bahamut any lower, the fanboys would burn me at the f***ing stake. But yeah, I'm willing to bet that any Final Fantasy fan knows about Bahamut, the series' Dragon King, the god of summons, the ruiner of heroes and monsters alike. From the series' origins, this beast of a dragon has been there, just waiting to test you. Let's go over some of the highlights, shall we? Granted, in the first game, he rewards you for completing a trial instead of fighting you, but that reward is a class change, which is awesome. When he returns in Final Fantasy III, it's the dragon's first role as a summon, but only once you beat him in the rematch, and it's not easy. But his signature flare magic, particularly Mega Flare, is devastating, dealing massive non-elemental damage, something he would continue using throughout the franchise. In Final Fantasy IV, you can't even fight Bahamut until Rydia has obtained the power of Ashera and Leviathan, and in Interlude, when he realizes he's been used by a faker, he just nopes his way out of the contract because he's such a badass. In Final Fantasy VII, there's multiple evolutions of Bahamut, from the original to Neo Bahamut to the unbelievable Bahamut Zero. And Rebirth has yet another form called Bahamut Arisen. In 9, Bahamut was originally one of Princess Garnet's summons until Queen Braun, and later Pretty Boy Kuja, stole him from her, and he would have burninated all of Alexandria if the heroes didn't have a freaking living castle to protect the town. In 13, Bahamut can turn into a freaking dragon jet in his Gestalt mode, as if he didn't even need to be more awesome than he already is. In 15, Bahamut is said to have started the cycles of the Oracles and the line of Lucius. In 16, he's the icon of Dion Le Sage and is revered as a divine being. But if you want the truest and purest form of Bahamut's power, look to Final Fantasy XIV, where his power not only destroyed the world, he destroyed the original version of the game. In the cutscene that heralded the end of version 1, Primal Bahamut broke free of his artificial moon prison and became an unstoppable force of destruction as the land was devastated. He was only stopped when this big-time sage named Luizawa absorbed enough ether to defeat the dragon. Or so it was thought. In A Realm Reborn, players are directed to the binding coil of Bahamut, where it's revealed that not only is Primal Bahamut still alive, but he's been torturing captive dragons to maintain his form and regenerating his power to finish what he started. And it's only by defeating an incarnation of Bahamut within the beast itself that the Primal can finally be laid to rest for good. This incarnation alone could have made the list, but no matter what form he takes, no single dragon can overcome this iconic beast. Note that I said no single dragon. And before we move on, here are a few honorable mentions. Hooktail, 1,000 Year Door. Just don't take him up on his offer. Sash Lilac, Freedom Planet. A great protagonist and she and Sonic would totally be besties. Hudra from Kid Icarus Uprising. 3 heads, 1 humorous conversation. And let's see what the Arcade Nation has to say with this month's patron picks.
I don't know who at Nintendo came up with the idea for the Lord of Lightning from Super Mario Odyssey, but whoever did made the game all the more memorable for it. I mean, it's not every day you get to see Bowser taming a dragon that comes straight out of a FromSoft game, huh?
With a wide range of coverage and setup moves, Dragonite is the OG dragon type of Pokemon. Even with all the quality of life improvements and generational gimmicks over the years, this Cantonian constant remains a competitive powerhouse. There are plenty of pseudo-legendaries in the Pokédex nowadays, but you should always respect the one that started it all.
My favorite dragon would have to be Landia from Kirby's Return to Dreamland. With a kick-ass design, fantastic boss fight, and being able to ride on one of the Landias during the final battle, what more can you ask for?
If I were to pick a dragon, it would most definitely be Dominic the Dragon from Miitopia. The shift in personality is so jarring yet so wholesome once it happens. As an enemy, he's extremely powerful and can do massive damage to your team if you're not careful. But as an ally, he's just a chill dude who always loves helping out. Hey, who says adorable dragons can't be allies?
Let me repeat the point I just made. No single dragon could overcome the legendary Bahamut. Good thing I have 5. I miss my dragon family tales. I miss them a lot. It's been about 2.5 years since the greatest mobile game I've ever played officially shut down, but I will never forget that Dragalia Lost existed. All these wonderful characters to play as, the story that kept me invested until the end, the gameplay that hooked me, all the goodies they gave us, all those cool events, and of course all of those awesome dragons. But one group of dragons stood central to the whole story. The 5 Great Worms. Midgardsormr, the Lord of Storms. Mercury, the Protector of the Tides. Brunhilde, the Steward of the Raging Flames. Jupiter, the Capricious Bringer of Lightning. And Zodiark, the Noble Shadow. Born from the origin that is this game's Bahamut, these 5 wondrous dragons hold power over the elements and stood alongside the legendary hero Alberius as he stood against the revival of the demon Morsayadi. Centuries later, they would be counted among Prince Yuden's staunchest allies as he undertook his own harrowing journey that would reveal the truth about himself and his world. Each of them has a great personality and contributes to the story in their own way. Midgardsormr is the first dragon that Yuden makes a pact with, and serves as a wise mentor figure to the young prince, having come to believe in the bonds between humans and dragons thanks to his travels with Alberius. Mercury is normally a kind, caring, and sometimes even motherly figure, but piss her off and she'll wash you out like the laundry. Jupiter is quite hedonistic and craves entertainment, but those who earn his trust will gain untold inspiration. Zodiark, in spite of his gruesome reputation, is marked by his boundless unconditional love, and in fact, he was once the dragon of Yuden's father Aurelius. And last but not least, there's Brunhilde, who started off quite prickly, but after Yuden and his friends saved her life, she developed a literal monster crush on our young prince and became an endlessly entertaining breakout character, particularly in her humanoid form, Mim. Throughout the entire run of the game, Mim was an endless source of delight. Speaking of forms, the Great Worms had really cool alternate forms to boot. Not only did you have their original forms, but also their advanced High Dragon forms and ultimately their incredible Primal Dragon forms, each of which boasted incredible power, and believe me, that power was earned, both in being able to use the regular and advanced forms as dragon allies, and the endgame Primal Dragon weapons. These fights were real tests of your skill, and having a well-built team was essential. They also got cool humanoid forms as well, which served as great adventurers in their own right, and the events they starred in were cool as well. And they also had adorable mini-forms which were among the many, many gifts given out during anniversary events. And their side stories gave us even more cool lore. For instance, did you know that Mercury's a gamer? Gosh, I don't know what else to say, the Great Worms were just meant to take this top spot. They were great as characters, they were awesome as allies, they gave us some awesome battles, and they were a symbol of my favorite mobile experience. I pray that one day we'll see them again. In fact, some people might think that this whole remake was just an excuse for me to talk about Dragalia Lost again. And to be fair, that might have been part of the reason. But hey, considering that Cygames was on the list of Nintendo's third-party partners for Switch 2, maybe there's a sliver of a chance for a follow-up? I'm the Quarter Guy, and until next time, the arcade is closed. Can't believe we have a whole week's worth of Star Wars puns. There's May the 4th be with you, there's Always a Bigger 5th, there's Revenge of the 6th, there's I Am the 7th, there's Let the 8th Flow Through You, there's a 9 addition to my collection, and finally, there's It's Treason 10. Heh. What can I say? This is the May. Next time QG at the arcade, Star Gladiator. It's game time! Hey everyone, QG here. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share the video around. Feel free to check out my Blue Sky and Twitch streams, and consider supporting me through Patreon and donating to my Extra Life campaign to support Children's Wisconsin. Thanks for watching.